My name is Evan Wong. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Checkbox, and I'm really excited to have you today. We're going to be talking about reimagining intake and matter management with AI. If you've never met me before, I've spent now probably about 7 to 8 years in the legal operations space, working with all sorts of different legal teams globally to help them shift their time from the low value work to the higher value, more meaningful, impactful work for the business. And yes, today we are talking about intake and matter management, not CLM, right? There's more to legal ops than CLM. I actually wanted to use Gartner for a moment to sort of paint out the picture for you for all the different capabilities that they've mapped out for legal operations here. You can see that contract management is in fact one of the capabilities that they've mentioned, but there are others. I'm sure many of you are also familiar with things like external matter management and e-billing. They usually go hand in hand, right? We tend to see these e-billing tools also have matter management. But for here at Checkbox, we really focus on these two areas here that's highlighted in the hexagons, the areas that map out intake, triage, service management. But we really couple that and see that together with workflow and automation, very much like we typically see matter management and e-billing coupled together as well. And we do this for many different companies, from Pinterest to BMW to Invisalign and many, many others. And I should probably say, if you have any questions along the way throughout this webinar, please use the Q&A box or the comments to type that in. You can interrupt me at any point. I'll try and field the questions as they come. So in terms of looking at these two buckets, the question is, why is this important? Why is legal intake, matter management, and automation important? Well, I want to take us a little bit into the evolution of a legal department. When you think about when a legal team starts, let's call it a few to one, few business users to one legal team member. Now, this could be the CLO or it could just be a senior legal counsel at this point. You have an organization that is still growing. And at this point, well, the business kind of knows who to go to for legal, and legal kind of knows everyone in the business. It's pretty easy to find who, because there's only one person, and the work tends to be lower volume and more strategic. And so when we're in this kind of situation, there's not too many problems that we typically see from a intake or matter management or automation perspective. The team kind of runs purely based on people. But then as the team begins to scale, we tend to end up with a many to few interaction, where we now may have many different business users with a few people in the legal team. Now, this is where some of the operational challenges start to creep in. This is probably where you begin to think about hiring your first legal ops manager as well. But you have here a situation where the business now has a much greater diversity of needs. They have a greater volume generally coming into legal. And with that, we tend to face new challenges of, well, who do I actually go to for this particular request? Is this even a legal request? Am I giving the right information up front? And maybe the volume of the work means that the legal team is now feeling a little bit of pressure to be able to turn around things fast enough. Now, I want you to think about your own organization and maybe this situation. Like, what are some of the solutions that you've put in place to tackle this very challenge? I can imagine that some of you may have begun to implement like a legal at company xyz.com, alias inbox, like a shared inbox to try and funnel and centralize some of these requests into one place to try and create some order to the chaos, right? But that kind of works. It still has its own challenges because someone still has to monitor the inbox. Someone still has to triage that to the appropriate legal team member. And on top of that, the inbox itself is still quite manual. And so you're not really getting a lot of the data out of the requests that are coming in. Not to mention, I've heard a client the other day say that with a shared inbox, they also have lawyers jumping in and doubling up on work because it's not very well coordinated. It's also at this point that the CLO begins to think about, okay, I want a little bit more visibility and a better data overlay on top of what is actually happening within the legal department. It's no longer at the scale where we can see everything that is happening. We kind of need to move up a few layers, bubble up to get a more data-centric view of what is happening in the legal department. And the centralized inbox doesn't really give that, right? And so we start to have these issues of slower turnaround times, lack of data, double up of work, etc. And at this point, I've seen teams then try to implement what is potentially called a legal front door. And I think when people use that phrase, they typically think about maybe bringing in some technology more than just email and being able to create a centralized one place, one-stop shop, almost like a portal for people to go to. But that also has its own challenges, right? I mean, well, let's first of all, let's give merit where merit is due. It first allows the business to provide structured intake, which is great, right? Structured intake means we can build in controls and guardrails to collect the right information up front. We can start to create automated routing, so triaging to the right legal team member. We can also start to get some of the data behind the requests that are coming in. So, the legal front door has been a pretty solid concept for many years, and it's been what many organizations have been implementing when it comes to solving legal intake. So, it's solid, it's good. And here at Checkbox, we've done that for years as well for our clients. But it still faces a very key challenge, which is change management. And I was speaking with a friend the other day, one of the director of legal operations at a big, like a unicorn tech company. And she was saying that she really didn't like legal intake for that very reason, because it requires too much change to the business. And at a certain scale, when you're a multi-billion-dollar tech company, your size of business in your legal team scales from many to few to many to many. And at this point, change management isn't just difficult, it can sometimes be impossible. Now, you don't have to be at a many to many. Maybe your organizations are still a many to few, but the challenge is still the same, right? It's just bigger for a many to many organization, where if you create some sort of structured central intake point to legal, you're having to maybe ask the business to stop emailing legal, to stop slacking legal, to stop picking up the phone, and to go to this website, to go to this portal that they have to log into, yet another system they have to understand. They have to learn this system. They have to click this link, fill in a structured form. They just want their questions answered. They don't want to fill out these support, ticketed IT-like experiences, right? On the flip side, legal doesn't like that experience either, right? When your legal team gets to a certain size, yes, we want the data, but legal also doesn't want to do a whole bunch of data entry and filtering through messages. And so we end up with this really interesting situation, right? We're like at this precipice of the problem is real, but the solutions aren't there. And I like to think of it as this kind of intake trade-off problem. That's the way I think about it. So the intake trade-off problem I like to explain is you've got these three different stakeholder groups. You've got the CLO and the legal ops. I'll put them together. And we've got lawyers and we've got business clients. They all want something different. The CLO and legal ops want more visibility and more data so that they can operate the legal department more like a business and have the data to make data-driven decisions around hiring more people, or maybe telling the narrative around actually we do need that additional headcount. We can't keep going when the business is outscaling legal resources. So that makes sense why they want visibility and data. And then we have the lawyers. The lawyers just want to do legal work. They don't want to do admin. They don't want to fill out timesheets. They left private practice for a reason, right? They just want to work on high value advisory, high impact work. And then we have the business clients who come to legal because one, they have to, or two, they really value legal's opinion. And when they do come to legal, they want that help to be quick and painless, right? To be able to just get what they need to move on with doing whatever business activity they need. If it's a sales team or a commercial team, it's to quickly get the deal done. If it's your compliance team, maybe it's to unlock moving into a new market so that, again, the business can continue growing, right? So, or maybe it's your product team. Your product team is about to launch a new feature. They're going to be launching, some marketing collateral around that as well, and they want an answer quickly so they can move on with their product development lifecycle. So we have these three different stakeholders, and here's the interesting, thing about the intake trade-off problem. Only two of these parties historically could be successful. Because let's say your CLO and legal ops wants visibility and data, and we give you the visibility and data. Because, well, we need to capture that data somehow, right? Let's say the lawyers just want to do legal work, so we don't need the lawyers to do admin. But then we have to push that onus of collecting the information in a structured manner to somebody, and that somebody might be your business clients. This is what I was talking about when I said historically with these front door implementations, you're creating these forms that now the business needs to change behavior for and fill in. We're pushing the onus onto the business clients. It means that the lawyers don't need to do it and the CLO still gets the data, but then we're kind of tainting the relationship with our business clients that we've probably worked so hard for so many years to build, right? I've also seen organizations that might shift it to the lawyers. So the business still sends Slack messages, they still send emails and whatnot. And it's actually the lawyers that are tasked by the CLO to go into this system and create a new matter or create a new request and to update the information every single time something new comes in. The business client is happy, the CLO and legal ops is happy, but the lawyers, they're not very happy. At the end of the day, they finish, a few different contracts, reviews and negotiation and answering questions here and there, and they still have to log into a system and plug in what they had to work on. Worse yet, imagine if they had to do an NDA that takes them 20 minutes and they spend 5 minutes having to record the fact that they worked 20 minutes on this NDA. It's no wonder that you don't get the adoption typically when you try to put these types of systems in place that require your lawyers to do a lot of the admin heavy lifting work, right? And when they don't do it, you lose completeness of data, and then the CLO legal ops interest point also crumbles. You don't have completeness of data. That whole system falls apart. And the default, I think, is where you keep everyone happy, but now legal ops and CLO has no visibility in data, and we're kind of left in the dark, and we're not able to get that, seat at the strategic table, right? I have seen another scenario, by the way. I haven't mapped it out, but it's like all three of these are happy, but then we push the work onto legal ops. Like legal ops becomes like the admin person who's running around doing all this and filling the gaps. That's obviously not what legal ops was created to do. So that's not great either. What if I told you there was a solution though? That it's not necessarily a trade-off problem anymore, but there is actually a solution where all three interests can be met simultaneously. Well, this is really where the turn of technology has happened in the recent few months, short years, right? This intake problem that people kind of knew existed but couldn't solve for many, many years, and try to plug things in like shared inboxes and these kind of tools that require a lot of form-heavy filling in, that has taken a turn. And that turn has really come from the development of technologies, yes, like Checkbox, but also of Gen AI, of the whole Gen AI movement. And so at Checkbox, we've solved for this with what we call the Legal Services Hub. Now, if you've been following me or Checkbox on LinkedIn, you'll see that we recently announced the Legal Services Hub just in the last few days. So I'm really excited to kind of share this idea live with you here on this call. The rest of this call is, I call it a call. I'm so used to the virtual language. The rest of this webinar, this session, will be a product demo. So this will be a little bit different from our usual webinars. Obviously, I don't have a guest with me today. You're just going to be hearing from me. But we're also going to be spending most of the webinar today looking at the actual Checkbox technology. So that'll be a treat for you, not having to jump onto a formal demo. We'll show you the ins and outs of our platform and what the Legal Services Hub and the promises it makes to solve the trade-off of the intake problem that we've just gone through. So what is the Legal Services Hub? Like, what is it? Besides being a very nifty kind of catchy name, what is it? Well, when we think about legal, a lot of what we do is delivering services. And it's about receiving requests, which is the initiation of those services. And yes, those services might be related to contracting, it might be related to IP, it might be related to involving outside counsel. But at the end of the day, we are a strategic service organization. And what is our platform to help receive those services, manage those services, and deliver those services? That's really the vision for Checkbox. And it's about bringing together these three concepts: intake, automation, and matter management. Now, for those of you who've been tracking Checkbox for a while, or perhaps are our customers, you'll know that Checkbox has been very well known for our automation, our self-service, the ability to give back time to legal departments. And many of our customers started to use our automation technology to also handle intake in the very kind of decision tree, structured, this, then that form experience. We've now developed a more dedicated product for intake and gone really deep. We've really invested and doubled down on intake, not just as a use case, but a completely separate capability, because we believe that the problem is real enough and it deserves its own, dedicated solution, more than just a use case of workflow, but rather really its own capability. And then we heard from our customers in the market who said, hey, like intake automation is fantastic, but what happens when it needs to go to a lawyer? Well, that's really where the home for those requests go, which is matter management. And again, you may have come across tools in the market that do one or the other. For example, there are definitely tools that have existed for many, many years that do matter management. But matter management without automation and intake is really hard to adopt, right? People are manually creating matters. They're manually automating, manually creating and updating the matters. And it also means that everything that comes to the legal department ends up as a matter. And by the way, I want to clarify here. When I use the phrase matter management, I'm using it in the context of internal matters, like general matters. I know that some of us who've been in the game for long enough, we know that matter management originated from litigation and e-billing, and we talk about it in terms of a matter going out to outside counsel. Here, we're using it in the most generic sense to mean requests, right? Or tickets, if that word doesn't scare you off. So matter management, and then you've seen organizations that come in with just automation. When you have just automation, again, fantastic ROI, but it doesn't really connect with the business very well. You're again having to create bookmarks for each automation tool you create. At some point, people don't know what exists and where it is. And so, and on the flip side, when automation fails to solve the problem and it needs to be escalated, there's not a very good pipeline then into engaging with the legal team. So often automation by itself, it tends to be isolated. It's not connected with the business and it's not connected with the legal department. That's a challenge with automation by itself. And then, of course, intake by itself without the others also has a challenge. Sure, you're bringing in the request from the business to legal, but then where's the home for those requests, right? Where's the self-service to actually give time back to the legal department? And so it really does make sense to bring these three concepts together, what we really call the legal services hub: intake, automation, matter management. And let me kind of show you how it looks like in practice, right? So if you think about a request coming in, it should be able to come in from any angle: Teams, Slack, Gmail, Outlook, SharePoint, Salesforce, Oracle, Ironclad, whatever it is. Whatever systems you have, rather than asking people to go to this concept of a front door, this new change management like place that they need to go, we should be able to live where our business clients live. We meet them where they are. And when it does get raised, if we can solve it using self-service, almost like a filter to catch everything that doesn't really need to consume our lawyer's time, and it involves an answer, there's an AI chatbot, an AI assistant that should be able to answer those questions automatically based upon specific organizational knowledge. If it's self-service and it's not an answer, but it's a process, then we have a workflow automation component. Now, processes in legal tend to be of two kinds: contracts and processes. Contracts kind of bleed a little bit into CLM, and this is where it gets interesting. For people who don't have a CLM, workflow is a great way to, do everything from contract initiation to drafting to reviews and approvals to negotiation to signature, all the way down to storage, right? So everything from intake to signature is really where workflow automation can play a big part in the contract management lifecycle. For those of you who have a CLM already in place, this is completely modular. So you could actually take out the contracting component and plug in your CLM, right? So that still the model itself, the intake model and the triaging and the general service delivery model works with your existing tech stack. Not everything in legal is contracts. It can sometimes be a process. Things like maybe it's around share trading. You're a publicly listed company and you want to understand the approvals for certain trading windows or specified persons who are allowed to trade. Maybe it's a process around a privacy or a breach notification, right? The ability to be able to create weights, to create scores, to say that this is a high breach, mid breach, low breach, and to then collect the appropriate approvals to go ahead and escalate or notify regulators, right? That's all process. But if a request comes in, it can't be solved using self-service and it involves our people, then that's really where the matters and collaboration product comes in, where it's able to create a home for those requests, but also a place where people can collaborate and share information and knowledge about each of those matters as well. And so what you're looking at here is really the operating model or the service delivery model when you have the legal service hub in place. It catches the self-service elements, and for the parts that need to be escalated, which are in fact the exponentially more complex work, then we have our legal team able to manage that in the system. Fantastic. So now, like promised, the rest of this presentation will be around an actual product demo. So let's see how this works in the actual software. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to just pump them in. They can be of any kind, whether it's about anything we've discussed so far or some of the features or reporting that we'll see in a moment. Okay, let's do it. The first place I want to start is over in Slack. I know many of you use Slack. Some of you may use Teams and some of you may use email very heavily. I'm going to show you all three mediums right now. Let's pretend that I am someone from your commercial team. I'm someone from your commercial team and I'm looking to, let's say, sign a contract that I have with a potential buyer. I can come in here in Slack and rather than messaging a lawyer, I could go ahead and say something like, I need help with a contract. Now, there's a reason why I'm using very low fidelity language, by the way. I need help with a contract, because I want to show you that we don't need to be quite specific with the AI. What the checkbox technology does is it reads the comment, says, sure, I can help you with a contract, but what specific aspect of the contract do you need assistance with? Right? You can clarify and get more information. Here I can say, okay, let's say I have a contract on hand, which I wish to sign. Who needs to approve before I do this, right? Now, this kind of actually is more of a buy-side use case, isn't it? So maybe more so it's maybe your marketing team looking to buy some marketing technology, right? And so then in this case, you can see the AI responds with our delegation of authority. Now, I wish I could zoom in a little bit more for you, but Slack doesn't allow zooming very well. But here, I'll read it out to you. The AI responds with, based on the contract value, the approval and signing authority is as follows. If it's less than 10,000, we have the head of legal, finance, and department. If it's between 10 and 50,000, different people, and so on and so forth. This response here is not based upon some sort of external internet policy or knowledge. This is specific to your organization. So the AI for Checkbox is trained on your material. And maybe we'll get a little bit later on into how the training works, but it's as simple as uploading your PDF or your Word document. Now, you notice that it kind of gives the full delegation. If I were to ask the question differently, let's say if I ask the question as, I have a $120,000 contract for marketing technology that I want to onboard. Who needs to sign off? The AI won't explain the whole policy for me. Instead, it will just say, because it is greater than 100,000, it is the head of legal, finance, and CEO. I could then go, oh, who's the head of finance again? I think we had a recent changeover. The bot is able to then also say, hey, the head of finance is actually, I don't know, Mary Jane, and her email is blah, 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 blah. So you can have that kind of interaction with the bot straight from Slack as a pre-filter to intake. And in this case, we may not even need to create a matter, but of course, any question comes through is still reported on, so we have the full picture of what's coming through. I have a question here from Kylie, by the way. So thanks, Kylie. She says, if someone Slack DMs you, can you initiate something to have Checkbox create a matter from that? Great question. I'm going to hit answer live so you can see, everyone can see that question there. So yeah, absolutely. The way that Checkbox works at the moment, what I'm showing you is the AI is sitting in a separate Slack app, almost like a channel, right? And so people have this private channel unique to them where they can really just interact with the content that you provide. If someone were to DM or message someone in Slack separately, what Checkbox is developing at the moment is the ability to have these dotted arrows drop down and have a create matter, and it takes the request in Slack together with the thread history, and then it creates a matter. And I'll show you what that looks like from a conversational history later in this demonstration. Okay, so fantastic question, Kylie. Thank you. Keep them coming. All right, so we have this scenario where we've given some advice. Now, what's great about the connection of intake and AI to workflow as well is that it's not just giving us the answer. It also gives us an action so that if we were to click start now, it launches the respective workflow that allows the people specified here to actually review the contract and approve it and complete the business process. So I'll say that again. It's not just giving the answers. It's also giving you the next step that then actually executes on the process to get what you need to complete your transaction. In this case, getting signature internally before executing an external agreement. Okay. Let's look at a different scenario. Let's jump over to Teams. For those of you who use Teams, same bot experience. In this case, let's say that this time, let's say it is a sales rep. They're looking to let's say it's your IT team, in fact. Let's say it's your IT team. They're about to run an RFP with a vendor. They're going to share some sensitive material. So they're going to say something like, we're about to share some, potentially sensitive process maps with a vendor. Is there an agreement that needs to be in place before doing so? So in this case, the AI again reads the question, and within a second or less, it says yes. Before sharing potentially sensitive process maps with a vendor, it is advisable to have an NDA in place, a non-disclosure agreement. An NDA is a yada, 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 right? It gives you a summary of what an NDA is as well, just so that if I am a business user who isn't commonly engaging with legal and not commonly using NDAs, I'm able to validate with common sense, yeah, that kind of makes sense. This is probably what I need. What you should notice here is that my question to the bot isn't specific. Like, it's not saying I need an NDA. It's not saying I'm going to share confidential information or I'm, something related to confidentiality. It's not really picking up keywords. It's a lot smarter than that. It understands the general context of that business activity that is happening, and it is able to then ascertain the best and most appropriate response as well as tool to provide to address and resolve that request as well. You can also see that the response is a little bit personalized, right? It says before sharing these process maps with a vendor, as opposed to it being a canned, hard-coded response. So the AI is quite intelligent in that way. And it also means that for the business, they don't really need to know how to word their request to legal. They don't really need to know the jargon of legalese. and they don't really need to know what is even on offer from legal. They're really just describing what they're trying to do in the business, and the AI is going to help sort through all of that for us, right? So that's pretty cool. You can also see here, there's still the link to trigger the subsequent action. So here, if I were to click on this link, you'll notice that it redirects me to a checkbox workflow, but not just any generic workflow. It actually finds the NDA. Now here, the bot could be trained on 10, 20, 50 different pieces of information and tools. It could do things for, like I mentioned, like data breach notifications. It could do share trading. It could do things like entity management and directorship, delegations. But here it is specifically picking up the NDA tool as what can then help this particular business user complete the rest of their process, right? I'm not going to go through this whole flow because today's focus isn't on CLM or contract generation, but you'll notice that what it does is it triages us to the correct tool to then complete the process. Now this doesn't, again, have to be checkbox. This could very well be your CLM, whatever it may be for you, right? So rather than it directing to checkbox, this could direct into your workflows in your CLM. Sometimes I do hear that people have CLMs that are very repository heavy and don't have the workflow component. And so then you might have checkbox work through the workflows of the contracts, like the generation, the approvals, the negotiation. And then at the point of storage, post-signature, we integrate with a CLM and off it goes in that connection there. All right, fantastic. So look, we've looked at contracting requests. Checkbox and intake isn't just contracting. It should be much broader than that. So what I want to show you as well is perhaps a use case that isn't just contracting. We could say, different request. In fact, let's do it in email. I promise you I'll show you it in email, right? Oh, actually, you know what? I'm going to show you email in a moment because I want it to do something different. Let's just stick in Teams for a moment. Let's say different request. Let's say I've just received NBA. It's NBA season, so we're going to use NBA. I've just received NBA tickets from a potential vendor, right? They're trying to sweeten the deal with us. Am I allowed to accept them? So you can see here the bot again responds and says, hey, you should actually refuse these tickets. If it's not practical to refuse, then we have to declare the gift within 5 days in our gifts and benefits register. And this is all against, the policy. So you can see here, this is not a contracting use case. This is tied more to compliance and gifts and entertainment. And very similarly, we could also set up a action here for someone to then click a link and take them into the actual register itself to then register the gift, right? And that register, by the way, can be built on checkbox, right? It doesn't have to be the fact that you have to now buy another register technology. Again, checkbox is flexible enough to address thousands of different use cases. All right, fantastic. So what I want to show you now as we traverse from Slack and Teams and automation on the AI side is traverse over to the matter management side. Okay, if we can't solve it using self-service and it needs to go to a legal team member, how do we do that? What escalation paths do we have? Well, the first escalation path we have is actually back in Slack and Teams, where if the bot doesn't have an answer, if it doesn't have a confident answer, it won't hallucinate. It won't make up an answer. It will actually say, hey, I don't actually know the answer to this. Here's a link to fill in an intake form, or here's the person you need to contact to get this question resolved. Right? Kind of like when you're on a maybe like a customer support bot, and at some point it takes you to a real agent, right? So that's the kind of experience that happens. Hopefully a better experience than support agents that you've experienced. But what happens if it does need to be escalated? Well, let's take a look at a situation where one of your business clients is looking to enter a partnership agreement with a potential partner, and they need legal to review this agreement. Now, we don't have AI and we don't have chatbot that's going to literally do legal work. It's not going to review a complex agreement and give red lines and advice to our business. That's absolutely not where we want technology to go. We want lawyers to be lawyers and do the important stuff. But how do we escalate and capture these requests when it goes straight to the legal team? All right, so I've got email here. This is Outlook, but it could be Gmail as well. And here I've pre-drafted an email, urgent legal review, because, you know, it's always urgent. Hi, legal team. We're currently in discussions. Attached is the agreement for your review. We need this by end of day, even though it's Friday. Hope that's okay. I'll go ahead and upload the agreement because I actually haven't done that. So let's go ahead and just upload let's go ahead into demo and let's just go and upload this agreement here. So this is being sent from Jennifer, the fake alias that I'm playing today, and I can go ahead and email, let's say, legal@yourcompany.com. When I hit send, this is going to, of course, send the email. This is obviously not checkbox. This is just normal email technology. It sends the email, and what will happen is the corresponding lawyer or legal team will receive that email. But the beautiful thing is, in the background, Checkbox has gone ahead and created the data and request behind this email submission. And so the cool thing here is we're trying to aim for little to no change management. If your business is used to emailing you, let them be. Let them keep emailing you. But what's great is in the background, we end up, now I've hit refresh here, we end up in our Matter portal with a new request, Matter 199, urgent legal review. If we click in, we know it's from Jennifer, and you can see the email that I drafted with you. Hi, legal team, blah, 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 blah. And here is the sample pizza sponsorship agreement. This means that if I, as the legal team, then reply to Jennifer, our reply will also appear here as well, captured, centralized, so that everything related to this matter is in the one place, including any files and versions of documents that may evolve throughout the conversation and the life cycle of this matter. Now, you might be thinking, oh, Evan, do our lawyers have to then come in here into this platform and log in and reply to these now? No, they don't. Yes, we have that functionality. Sure, it's fully integrated with email, but no. Your lawyers can actually stay in email, reply in email, never having to ever log into Checkbox. And all of the conversations and the files will be captured in the background automatically without them knowing. There's also the concept of internal notes. So if your lawyers do in fact want to come into this system and they want to create notes for themselves against this matter, sure, they can do that, right? You can even tag people. Like I could say let's say at Brittany, right? Need you to take over whilst I go on leave for the next 2 weeks, right? I can do that as well. I can add an internal note. It doesn't go to the requester, but now Brittany will get an email saying, hey, Evan's tagged you in an internal note. She'll come in and she'll see the context of the request and all the correspondence back and forth, and can take over from here. Let me show you a more built out, maybe request. You can see here that it's capturing back and forths between different parties, right? So here's one where maybe Maddie started the review and then Dave responded to it. So there's this kind of back and forth that's being captured, and there's different versions of documents being captured as well. This also means we don't have to jump into someone's inbox and try to find, like I absolutely hate searching for files in inbox. It's just the worst experience. Every single document that's associated with this matter is then filed separately here, so you don't have to do, inbox dumpster diving. I've got a question coming through, so I'll just answer it now from Andrew. Thanks, Andrew. I should click on the answer live. Are you able to kick off contract review workflows from Checkbox to your CLM if a request is submitted? In other words, contract review. Absolutely. Yes. Yes, you can. So the beauty of the Checkbox workflow product is that it is kind of like the plumbing between your people and your systems. And so you can definitely kick off a contract review from Checkbox and then send it to a CLM when it hits a point where it needs to be reviewed. Or you can even have it go the reverse way. Maybe in your CLM, you are tracking obligations management, and 30 days out from expiry date, you want Checkbox to kick off a renewal workflow to get all the commercial owners together to then renew the contract or negotiate. It can go the other way around as well. Thanks. Great question. All right. Fantastic. Let's jump back a little bit to the matter view and take a look at this as well. So here we have a list of matters. We can, update these on the fly if we like. For example, this is now a medium priority matter, and we've just, it's not completed. It's actually more complex than we thought, and so we're bumping it back to a in progress status. We can also give the power to legal ops and the GC to do some pretty interesting things, like look at all the high priority matters, right? We can see everything that's high priority. We can also able to see things like specific attorneys and what they're working on. So here, Dave is working on 4 things, 3 things that are high priority. And this becomes a really good tool for some of the rituals that you might be having within the legal department. For example, you might be running one-on-ones. You might be running stand-ups. And this becomes a very great way to skip over a lot of the context building and status updates that is often consumed in a one-on-one that takes really expensive people's time, including your GC and CLO, away from actually discussing the meats of the matter itself, right? So we've heard that from legal teams where they spend their one-on-ones just giving status updates. Now with a tool like this, you can get the full context and really just dive into, the debate or the advice that's needed internally. Got an anonymous attendee call in a question. Let me read this out for everyone as well. Does Checkbox reside within company firewalls, or does every command question go out to the Checkbox servers? Similarly, where are documents submitted to Checkbox via, e.g. emails from clients stored? All right, great question. I love this question because I think when we talk about AI, we talk about, like emails, security, and data is super important. So the answer is Checkbox is a SaaS solution. We do have our own firewalls and we have our own servers. We're SOC 2 Type 2, we're ISO 27001 and some other ISO certified as well. And so we kind of manage and own the security of the data that you send through to us, just like any of the SaaS products that you probably use with Microsoft or Jira or any other sort of legal technology. We have all of the enterprise security to make sure that we are handling your data appropriately. Where is it all stored? It's stored on Checkbox. It's stored on Checkbox. Of course, it doesn't mean that it's not now stored in your emails. It's still stored in your emails. It's just mirrored here in Checkbox, but we have all of the protections to ensure that your data is safe. I know that there's probably going to be a question coming up around, well, does any of this, given that it's being used with AI, go to the AI models? Does it train publicly available information? Does it train our model? And the answer is no. None of your data goes out to the public outside world. It doesn't get used to train any AI models either. Okay, so hopefully that answered that question. Fantastic. Keep them coming. I love these questions. So the other thing I wanted to show you is the high-level reporting that also exists for legal operations and the CLO function. Whilst this is quite tactical in the way that we view different views, things that people are working on, and maybe even segment out things that are sensitive, like people and culture related inquiries or M&A inquiries, there's also a more aggregate view. There's a more aggregate view where we can see everything that's coming in from a reporting perspective. How many matters have come through? How many are open? How many are completed? And by the way, you can set up your own workflow. You could say, maybe we want total, open, in review, with the counterparty, and then completed, right? You can set, it's fully customizable, right? We also have graphs that allow you to measure things like volume of work over time. I've seen this be really effective for the companies that work with us to tell that narrative, to say, hey, in the last 2 years, we've doubled in the number of requests that have come into legal because our business has grown, or the complexity of just operating businesses is much greater. But our legal headcount hasn't doubled in the last 2 years. The work has doubled, the headcount has not. That's why you're experiencing slower turnaround times. That's why the service quality perhaps has dropped. That's why our people are overworking, burnt out, and we're spending a lot more time and money rehiring and retraining and losing institutional knowledge. Or maybe it is the fact that now, with so much more work and not enough resources, we're starting to introduce risk into the business because we can't stay on top of everything. And so with this kind of graph, you could say, well, now we don't just tell the CFO, hey, we're really busy, we need more headcount. We can actually say, hey, look at this data set. We do really need another headcount given the scaling of work. And you can start to make those data-driven business cases for advocating for more resources in the legal department. Or on the contrary, I've seen companies like Coca-Cola use checkbox dashboards to say, actually, we haven't increased our headcount as much as the business has grown, but that's because we've implemented legal operations and technology and automation and self-service. And it is our investment in these strategic activities that have allowed us to increase the capacity of legal without necessarily scaling headcount, right? And that becomes a very strong, like a ROI justification for the work that we do in the Office of General Counsel. There's also graphs by practice area, so you can see here, you can see like which parts of the business are coming to you and for what. Which parts of the business are on the right-hand side, but for what is on the left-hand side. And this is, again, a very good way for us to make operational decisions. If we find that, let's say, there's a whole bunch of product work that's coming in more so than others, is this a training gap? Do we need to provide more training to that part of the business? Is this an opportunity for self-service? Is this an opportunity to hire another attorney, not generally, but specifically a product specialist attorney, right? So we can make these kind of operational decisions. And what's really nice about the checkbox dashboarding as well is it's all drilled down. So if I was curious as to like what is the 19% that makes up the finance matters, I can click into it and it gives me the drill down of the specific matters that correlate with or make up that particular data set. Okay, so that's quite neat. And all of this is customizable. So if I were to go ahead and edit one of these, you'll see that the report builder is very intuitive and it's quite beautiful. You can just add another field that you want to report on. Let's say it is, I don't know, deal type. And then all of a sudden, we've added deal type as another column. For these sets of matters, there are no deal type. The value is null, but if it had a value, it would show in the graph as well. It's really that easy. Like you're just picking what you want to see and it updates live as you go, which is quite unique as opposed to having to run the report. Everything here is dynamic and live. Fantastic. Very good. I was hoping to also show you one more AI feature, which would be really cool, which is the ability to upload. In fact, let's just do it really quickly. Okay, I'm going to speak a bit faster. I'm just going to show it to you. Let's say you're in a workflow form and you upload a document from a third party. So this is third-party paper. What's really neat as well is when you bring together workflow and matter management, you can not only create matters automatically, but you can fill in a lot of the fields automatically from the automation and AI. Here I've got a really long contract. It's a sponsorship agreement between Central Park Football Club and Yummy Chicago Pizza. You can see that the AI tool extracts out all the key terms from the contract. And some of you might say, oh, Evan, like this is CLM stuff. I'm like, yeah, sure. CLM has this functionality. But the key difference is this is happening pre-signature, not post-signature. This is happening at the workflow level. And so what happens here is it's not necessarily used for obligations management, even though it could be. What it's used for is to drive workflow, to drive approvals, to drive the creation of matters. And in this context, you can see that when I click confirm and proceed, from a business user simply uploading their agreement without having to really do any data entry, without a contract manager having to read the document and extract out the meta variables into the actual keying in the information, you'll see that when I go into all matters again, we now have a new matter ID 200. And the neat thing here is a lot of the information is already filled in. The sponsorship agreement type is automated from the AI and workflow automation, right? As opposed to it being an NDA, it knows it's a sponsorship agreement. Again, I want to stress what we did. All we did was we uploaded the contract. We didn't tell the system it was a sponsorship agreement. The system knew. It knew the contract value. It knew the counterparty, right? These were the terms that we said to extract out for the AI, and it's now created a matter with all this information filled in. And again, the key thing is when we go back to the intake trade-off problem, you can see here that the business is still sending an email. The lawyers are not having to key in any information, but the GC and legal ops gets the data complete with the reporting, right? It's a win-win-win. To wrap up, I'm just going to remind some of you who may be new to Checkbox or it's been a while, everything you saw is built without coding. That's our special sauce. Checkbox is a no-code product through and through, not just because it's a sexy word in the last few years and people have added features that are no-code. We are truly a no-code first platform, which means that everything you saw from the workflows to the AI to the matter management is built without coding, and it is completely configurable. Unlike some of the other systems that you might be looking at, where step 1 to step 2 to step 3, or even the fields and the reporting is hard-coded and fixed, and you have to work around the technology, our technology works around your processes. It's fully customizable, and it's all done using just drag and drop. You map out what you want, and not only are you mapping it out and seeing it visually, this then creates the actual software as you map it out. Okay, so it's super cool, and you don't need IT skills to do this. And yes, we have implementation partners if you don't want to do this yourself, and our team can help you as well. But many of our customers do scale really, really successfully because the power of innovation is in their hands. Fantastic. All right. Any final questions for me and the product as we get to the final minutes of this webinar? All right. To round out, I do want to remind you, this is what Checkbox does. This is the legal services hub. All of these different modules work together to create that amazing experience that you've seen today. And it's completely modularized. So if you already have a CLM, you can plug that in. If you have an outside counsel, e-billing tool, you can plug that in. We've worked with some other tools before where intake leads to the creation of a matter, creation of an outside counsel request. If you already have a matter management system, again, you can plug that in. We can play the intake and the AI component and the workflow. So all of this is modular and it fits with your existing tech stack.